I was wondering when the storm would show up here. I almost said that on the way to the airport. X kind of messed up and the storm came after me this time. I'm not allowed to come here without a storm. It's the only way to get the humidity down to where I can bear it.
Storm.
Yeah, so we got to bring a storm in.
Oh,
It was in Las Vegas when I was coming here, so I figured it was on its way. You know what that word means?
Son, you're in a cell.
Huh?
You're in a cell.
Easiest translation is spirit. So we've got two ideas, huh? We've got this thing called spirituality and we've got psychology. I wish you folks would understand that psychology is a small part of spirituality. It's not the whole thing. It's just a little piece. Boy, it would be nice to get past this point. Stop dealing with psychology. Psychology is the most boring, limited subject I have ever seen. Because it really just comes down to one simple little thing. You find something about life intolerable. Your entire psychology is trying to prevent that from happening. That is the complete and total explanation for your psychology. If you won't take a look and see what that thing is, and remove that condition from your willingness to be alive, we will deal with psychology for the rest of our lives, because you can find symptoms of that over and over in every place you want to look, and you can treat symptoms for the rest of your life. Or you can look at what it is that you find so unbearable that you must put that condition on life and say, I will live only if this does not exist. And you can change your mind and say, oh, I don't know, I suppose I can live with that too. And we can move on. Isn't that kind of implicit in this thing called the picture of man that we're going to draw one more time? Don't you get it? We've said about as clearly as it can possibly be said, in my opinion, the word conditioning comes from the word condition. And the way it works is anytime you set a condition on your willingness to experience, you are in conditioning. How much clearer can that be? Stop setting conditions on your freedom to experience, and we can move on and see what the rest of spirituality is about. That's all there is to it. Are you willing to be free? So far your answer has been no, hasn't it? I am not willing to be free to experience life as it is. I won't do that. I will not be free to experience life. So So we get to deal with conditioning over and over and over and over and over again. Conditioning is all the ways that you try to prevent the things you are not free to experience from happening. And they're obviously very effective, aren't they? They're working so good. I don't know. It seems to me it would be just a little bit easier to just go ahead and say, okay, I give in. I will have that experience. I'll go through it. I will stop fighting it. I will stop resisting it. I don't necessarily promise to stop disliking it, but that's the way it goes. Although even that is kind of silly. You're going to do it whether you like it or not. It seems to this one it would make sense to just forget about liking and disliking too. I'm going to do it anyway. Belita, when you told me it's intolerable, you must prevent it, isn't that right? I've got to prevent this. You fail. So then you find a way to distract yourself. Did you actually succeed at not experiencing it? Then why do you keep trying not to experience it? That's what I don't understand. You have failed miserably your entire life. And then you will try again the next time. When does it happen that you just sit there and say, oh, I give in, I will have this experience? I'm tired of struggling with it. I give in, I will have this experience. And get it over with. Move on. The focus is so much on prevention. I can stop this. The greatest vanity that ever was. I am so powerful. I can prevent this experience. What a load of turkey turds. You cannot do that. Almost everyone who comes to spiritual teaching comes to find power. You know that? They don't come looking for spirit. They come looking for power. That is what you all want. The power to prevent the things you don't like from happening. You tell me that's not what your life is about. You haven't found it? Well, guess what? I don't have it either. I haven't a clue how that is done. So if you're waiting for me to tell you how that is done, I don't know. You came to the wrong place. I recommend you leave. I don't know the answer to that question. I do not know how to prevent life from happening. I don't know. What I know is how, if there's a how to it, what I know is the freedom to experience life as it is. And as far as I'm concerned, that's better than power any day. Because with that, I don't need power. If a car alarm goes off at 3 o'clock in the morning, I am free to be woke up. I don't need conditioning to try to overpower this experience and say, this is not right, I shouldn't be awakened at 3 o'clock in the morning by a car alarm. I don't know that. It happens. That's the way it is here. I live in a world with a bunch of people who want to be safe, so they insist on making noise all the time. thinking that'll make them safe, okay? I don't think that's going to go away tomorrow. They're all terrified somebody's going to steal their silly little car. And you have to buy insurance, and the insurance companies force you to have a car alarm, don't they? Because they think that'll make them, it's just, what is going to change here? What's wrong with just freely waking up and saying, oh, I get to get up at 3 o'clock this morning. Look around and see if you can find something interesting to do until you get tired again. What is the big deal about just doing this freely? Instead of having rights, complaining, and all that sort of stuff to try to prevent the unpreventable. That's all there is to psychology. That's what you do. You're trying to prevent a bunch of stuff from happening that is part of life. When I was a kid, I wanted to prevent myself, whatever the hell that meant at the time, from having thoughts that I didn't like. I got to share childhood with a sibling that I wasn't particularly fond of. So there were a lot of thoughts about that other person that I shared this experience with that I did not enjoy having, sometimes to the point of murder and mayhem. Gee, I wish they didn't have a head anymore. They'd be a much more delightful person to have around without a head. That was kind of disturbing when I was a little kid, having these thoughts about, I wish my sister would die. That's one of the things I set out to do. Prevent a thought from ever occurring again. Well, I don't know. I just have a feeling there are a lot of human beings on planet Earth that went through childhood with thoughts like that. I don't think that's particularly ridiculous. I know a lot of people really like their siblings. I also know a lot of them don't. And so I bet a lot of kids have sat and wished that their siblings were dead. What do you think? There's nothing particularly unusual about that, is there? I don't mean there's anything wrong with me. It just meant I was a kid, didn't it? That was the only thing I could imagine at that age, is I just wish they would vanish. Instead of, maybe I can find some way of dealing with this. I don't do that today. I have some annoying neighbors. When they start getting annoying, the first thing that pops into my head is I wish they would die. That is not what happens. And it's very plausible they are really old. They could die at any moment, but that just isn't what pops in the head anymore. Gee, I just wish they would croak. I wonder if I could go and scare them and they'd have a heart attack. I don't think things like that anymore. But that was one of the things that I could not deal with when I was a kid. I have these thoughts. They're horrible. I put a condition on life. I will live as long as I don't have thoughts that are nasty. Okay? Then you're not going to live very often, Phil. Because right now you have a lot of nasty thoughts. I'm actually not exaggerating. I told this story before. It is utterly true. When I was about 5 years old, I was informed that we had to move from a place that I really, really enjoyed. And of course, being a 5-year-old, I said, why? I don't want to move. Well, your sister is dying of tuberculosis because of where we live. You know what my response was? Good. I didn't like her anyway. Can we stay? That's the way I felt. Perfect. This will solve all my problems. Now, I will still get to stay here where I really like it because there are frogs all over the place because, you know, that was the problem. It was very humid where we were, and there were all these frogs around, and I really liked the frogs, and I can keep playing with the frogs, and I won't have to play with that brat that you guys brought in here a few years ago. Never liked her anyway. This sounds like the perfect solution to me. Talk about cold, huh? But that's the way I felt. I knew it was wrong, especially when I saw the look of horror on Mom's face when I said it. I knew that you weren't supposed to have that thought, but damned if I didn't. That was the first thing that popped in my head. All right! Perfect solution to my problem. Let's stay here. And I'll have everything I want. Well, you know, as time went along, people convinced me that that was not appropriate. Actually, they convinced me that that was kind of vile and evil and bad. And I sort of caught a glimpse of the fact that that may be true, that kind of wishing other people were dead for your own convenience was the nicest thing in the world. And then I hated myself. There's something wrong with me. I'm broken. I've got to prevent this. But I don't think that's so weird for a 5-year-old to do, personally. What do they understand of life at that point? It's kind of the way most 5-year-olds really are, isn't it? They're just very selfish, greedy little animals. Okay, at 5 years old, I was like everybody else. I was a selfish, greedy little animal that only cared about itself. So? That's one of the conditions I put on my existence. I will live here as this person as long as certain thoughts don't happen. Well, they did. And of course, the harder I fought them, the more they happened. And I felt really bad. They actually stopped happening when I started having a little compassion and said, you know, I don't think you're as messed up as you think you are. You're just like sort of like human. Maybe this is human to feel that way. You might want to find another way of dealing with it. Then they started to disappear when I was okay for them to be there. It's just that simple. I said, all right, fine. I have murderous thoughts every now and again. I'm okay with that. I think it's just human. I don't have to act on them. I don't even really have to like them. I don't have to enjoy them. I don't have to want them. In reality, they just come up every now and again. So what? Then they stop coming up. They really weren't that interesting as I got older. That's all there is to the whole game of psychology, is just looking at the facts, seeing the resistance to it, and realizing that being unfree to experience this is not working, and saying, I give in. I'm going to have this experience and think it's okay. I'm not buying the rules that have been made up here that I have to be a certain way. I don't think they know how I should be any more than I do. I'm not going to do that anymore. I've heard of a set of principles that a person can live by. That's what I've been told. Honestly, I have no proof that's true. I've seen a few people make the effort at it. I've even seen some really do a good job of it. But pretty much the bulk of the human race would tell me that those principles are lies. Love one another? Come on. Where the hell do you see that on planet Earth? We've all heard the concept, haven't we? Do you know that can actually be done? Have you seen it done? It might be interesting to find out about and see if I could live by those principles, but I don't know that I'm going to spend the rest of my life hating myself and resisting the fact that I'm not too good at it, because that sort of just makes me part of the human race, doesn't it? And as far as I can tell, resisting it means that you will never be able to do it. Worse, it means that you will lie and claim you have. Because as I walk through this planet, I hear people talking about how loving they are all the time. How about you? I just don't see much examples of love coming out of those people that tell me how loving they are. Do you? So apparently, when you resist it and refuse to deal with it and put all these conditions on it, you either get neurotic or psychotic as possible, or pretty soon you just imagine that you've actually succeeded. And then really gross out the next generation who says, that's love? I don't know about you, but that was my experience when I was a little kid. Everybody talked about love, and I looked at what they were doing, and I said, if that's love, I don't want no part of it. This is horrible. That's psychology. That's really all there is to it. If you want to overcome your own psychology, be free to experience anything. Stop fighting. Stop resisting, because that's where all the neuroses come from. I think there was a psychologist a few years back who wrote an entire book where all he did was say over and over and over again that the way he treated patients is every time they'd come to him with some horrible problem and some horrible thing they would do, he would look at them and say, so, what's the problem? That was his big treatment plan. I forget what it was. He was also supposed to be some spiritual guy. Anybody read that book? It was very popular for a while. As far as I could tell, that was his entire treatment. Whatever somebody told them they'd done, he'd say, so, what's wrong with that? And of course they'd tell him all the things that was wrong with it, and at the end of it he'd say, yeah, so, what's wrong with that? And if he could actually get them to say, yeah, I guess maybe it wasn't so bad, they were over it. That was his big discovery. Wow, people's problem is that they hate what they've done. And they hate what everybody else does. Woo. But I don't see that understanding here. That if you want to deal with the psychology part and get over it, that's what you do. You freely experience it and stop fighting all this stuff. Stop playing this game of putting conditions on your willingness to freely experience. So it appears to me that you don't even want to study psychology. You just want what you always want, the power to prevent. Okay? And it doesn't exist. A friend used to say that trying to stop a particular thought was about equivalent to going up on top of a bridge over a busy freeway and trying to keep red cars from going under the bridge. Now, if you can figure out a way to do that, let me know. Thoughts just happen. What matters is the ones that you identify with and act on. Isn't that correct? it's not important what thoughts came up. It's the ones that you took seriously that matters, huh? Well, if you're trying to prevent a bad thought, you're taking it seriously. If you just let it go under the bridge, how long would it last? That's all this is about. I am not free to experience life as it is. I demand and insist that life be my picture of good. And then we've got just a ton of people here who all have a different picture of good, don't we? So then we got to fight about what that is. The last thing I'd ever want to do is have some gang member become the arbiter of good. Hey, you imagine that they're evil and know it. I don't. I think they're doing the exact same thing you're doing, and they're living out their idea of good. And I certainly don't want that idea of good myself. I really doubt that most of the folks who are playing that particular game think of themselves as evil. I think they've got it all justified, just like you do, and got it all explained away so that what they're doing is completely reasonable and the only intelligent thing to do, and actually probably think that you're kind of an idiot for knuckling under to an intolerable situation. Of course, I've seen what some of their idea of intolerable is, which is, you don't respect me. Well, yeah, that's true. There are lots of people that don't respect me. I just don't try and kill them when they show me disrespect. I just figure they're a goofball and walk off. But that's what I've noticed when I had a little dealings with people in gangs. The thing that most of those folks find unbearable on planet Earth, and that they had to set up a condition for that dictated a way of life that we just find repellent, is that we don't respect each other. And by God, their decision was, if you don't respect me, you will wish you had. So I may not be able to command your respect, but I can command your fear, and I'll take that as second best. And I'm sure that in their mind that is perfectly reasonable and right, just like your idea of right is. Because you're playing the same game, only you're just playing it with a different thing that you find intolerable. That's what I found out. I'm sure that's not 100% of the time, but that seems to be the big issue for people who end up in gangs like that. You don't respect me. It's okay. I've got a second best that I'll take instead. You will fear me. It's not respect, and I think they know it, although they call that respect, interestingly enough. They've settled for second best. And they're just as self-righteous as you are. If you live within their little society, they're doing exactly what is ideal and perfect in a terrible world where no one has any respect for anyone else. How do you like them apples? From this point of view, you're no different than them. Let's go through this again and maybe see if you can hear this another way. Can I borrow the watch, Bill? Can I borrow the watch? Thanks. So there is this being, It is life itself somehow. It may be far more than life, but that's one of the things we know of it. It is life. And it had this interesting idea, which was to create a bunch of physical stuff, it not being physical apparently. And then had an even more peculiar idea to go and live in some of those physical things. Now there's a side effect from that decision. When life enters into a physical form, you can see how good I am at this. Would you put this on?
Sure.
I have no skill at this. When life enters into a form, an interesting thing happens, okay? A secondary effect comes about, which is called awareness of that presence within matter. So we have the energy or principle or whatever the right word for something that isn't matter. We don't have words for something like this, okay? That just is life itself. It creates a form, it gets in it, and we get a secondary thing, which is, I know I'm here. Every living thing on planet Earth has that, because every living thing has a little bit of life within it, doesn't it? Dogs know they're here. They don't know it very well, but they do at least know they exist, don't they? That's pretty clear. The little buggy knows it exists, doesn't it? I suspect viruses know they exist on some level or another, because the very atoms that things are made out of have that awareness, if you can perceive it. Everything has a little speck of life in it in the material universe. That's the way it is. In the human form, there is a potential for something that does not exist in any other form that we are aware of as human beings. There may be other forms out there with this potential, but as far as we know, human beings are the only ones that have this particular potential. And that is that I can not only know that I exist, I can know that I am God. In the human being, this awareness can know that what is going on is that I am God incarnate. I ain't the whole thing, which is where we get into blasphemy, you understand. But I am a little speck of that incredibly infinite being that is life. And I can know that consciously. Well, isn't that sort of what all the yap about spirituality has been about, with not necessarily religion. I'm aware of that. Religious folks want to make you a separate creation that owes God. Isn't that about right? So, theology, which is technically what that should be called in our language, that's theology, is not religion. It is an attempt to control human beings yet another way, by using ideas about God. And so that's what most of us are taught, isn't it? You are a separate creation, you have a separate existence, and you owe your maker. Just like our parents tried to lay on us, most of us, huh? Didn't most of your parents lay a trip on you that you owed them because they had sex one day? And then they spent several years taking care of you? I don't know. It kind of looked to me like you did that of your own free will, at least part of the way through. I saw you kicking and screaming an awful lot. I don't quite understand why I owe you. It looked like something you wanted to do to me. Why do I owe you? That's a peculiar human notion, isn't it? I made you, therefore you owe me. Well, with the parents, I don't even buy that, you see. I'm sorry, you didn't make me. Someone else did. You were the folks who took care of me, and for that I'm quite appreciative, although I must say you did a piss-poor job. But nonetheless, for that I am grateful. I don't understand what I owe you for that. You took that job on, didn't you? Did I make you do it? Did I come here and force you to do it? This is a peculiar human notion, isn't it? That your maker puts an obligation on you. I see no evidence of that anywhere but within human society. There is no obligation on you. You're not even a separate creation. You are still what you have always been, a small speck of God. When that enters into a form, there is now an awareness of existence that did not happen before. It comes from that complex interaction between matter and spirit. Out of that comes a sense of, I am here. In the human form in particular, it can be a much greater sense of I am here, because it's who the I is that's here that can be radically different. Who is that I that is here? Well, it's the same I that's everywhere. There's only one being in this universe, folks, no matter what you believe. And I can know that, which nothing else on the planet can do. There we have the sort of setup here on planet Earth, and life gets a kick out of doing things. So the other thing we put in this picture is all the things you do. One of the things that is an observable fact about life is that he is a real ham. He loves pretending to act out different parts in this complex plays, rather, huh? So over there, he sits there and says, I'm a rose. What do you think of me? I'm a rose. And he plays that part. And over there, he says, look, I'm a rug. And he plays the part of a rug. And then there'll be a little spider that runs from the rug to the rose. He's a real ham, isn't he? He just gets this kick, apparently. I don't know about the kick part, but that's an observable fact. Life has this urge from somewhere to act out parts, play roles. That's going to happen no matter what, isn't it? You are going to act out a part in life, aren't you? Not one of us can look at God and say, oh, no. I absolutely refuse to allow you to play the role of Philip. I won't let you do it. And you'll say, oh, but you don't get it. That is the role I'm playing with Philip. I'm playing the part of the rebellious person who will not play a role. Tricked you. You have to do my will. You have no choice. What else are you going to do? I thought that would be a fun part to play. I always wanted to play the part of the guy who hated God and wouldn't go along with anything he did. And here you are. This is fun. I like this role. And you want to look for good and bad and right and wrong in a minstrel show? It's just a show, folks. Played by the universe's biggest ham actor. Okay? I mean, he is good. You've got to give him that. He is a good actor. At least he's not a bad ham actor, but he really is a ham, isn't he? Any old part he comes up with, he just says, oh, good, let's do that. He doesn't judge anything, does he? He doesn't say, oh, that's a dumb part. Well, if he does, we never see those, though, do we? He sure don't judge the way we do, does he? Because he's busy being that gang member that's all upset that he's not getting respect, that we all think is the scum of the universe. Well, that's God too. He said, you know what, I want to be a gang member, and I want to put my hat on backwards, and I want to wear guns and knives. I want to pretend like the Wild West is still here. I like the cowboy movies. Who are we to judge? The idea of getting beyond all of that is to activate that potential that life gave us as a human being to play our part knowing what we're doing. And God playing the role of this twitty little guy who walks around in black talking about God. I just got this bug up my ass one day. That's what I wanted to do. And that's what I'm going to do. And you know, it was really weird, but the guy I made to do that, he said, hey, no, that sounds like fun. Let's do it together. Apparently he gets a kick out of that too when one of these humans says, I like that idea, let's do it together. Let's know what we're doing. Let's not do it the way you normally do, like, you know, in our sleep. Let's do it and know that's what we're doing. He seems to think that's a grand idea. I kind of presume that's something he desires. It desires whatever. Sex is inappropriate here. God does not have a sex, male or female. But at any rate, I suspect this is a desirable thing, or else why would he put the potential there if he didn't want it done? That sort of gives me a clue. Maybe this is one of his things that he kind of thinks would be a good idea, huh? I don't know about you, but if I don't think electricity is a good idea, I don't put it in sockets. You know, if I were going to build a place to make hydrogen gas, I'm not sure I'd go around putting a bunch of electric sockets in there. You know? It might not be such a great idea. I think that's pretty apparent, isn't it? If the potential is there, I suspect that life probably wants it activated, at least on occasion, or he wouldn't put it there. Clearly, it's not that big a deal, because most people never activate it. But it does seem to get a little enjoyment out of it when on occasion that happens. The theory is you're here because you're interested in that. Unfortunately, I think you're here because you've got problems you want to take care of and you're not interested in that. So we spend all our time on psychology. But honestly, if you get past the psychology and overcome the animal part of things, there's a whole other side to this game that's really quite a kick if you want to play. Are there any questions or comments? It really appears to me that we lose sight of what's going on here. We're so stuck in that awareness that I'm this individual and its own unwillingness to experience certain things about life that we forget there's a bigger game going on here. And think that the entirety of the game is to deal with the problems that hating life causes. Because, you know, that really is your big psychological problem, you know. You hate life. Fortunately, most of you don't hate all of life. If you did, you'd probably be dead. You would have committed suicide. But that's your big problem psychologically. You hate life. Just be glad he don't hate you back. Although a friend of mine used to tell a story about that. Would you like to hear a very bizarre story?
Sure.
Once upon a time, there was a fellow named Abraham. And we'll pick it up fairly towards the end of the story because it gets really boring if you go through his whole life, because his whole life goes about like this. We'll pick it up at one particular point. He's running a shop in New York, a little hardware store, and finally starting to make ends meet. After starting this business, you'll understand why in a moment, why it takes him a while to get ends to meet. And then he starts to actually make a little bit of a profit. And he's feeling pretty good that maybe finally he's getting there in life, and life won't be such a struggle. And along comes the worst flood that has hit New York in 50 years and destroys his shop and leaves all the rest of them on the street pretty much alone. But his shop is completely flooded. Everything that he is trying to sell is destroyed. He didn't have enough money for insurance. So the next day after the flood, all the rest of the shopkeepers come down to try and find out what's left of their businesses. And they see out on the front sidewalk in front of the hardware store, Abraham beating his head against the sidewalk and wailing. And as they get a little bit closer to their store, they hear Abraham saying, "Why me, oh Lord? Why is it always me?" Over and over and over again. So they try to console him. And they say, you know, look, the rest of us are in pretty good shape. We'll help you out. It's no big deal. And he just is inconsolable because this has been his entire life. Like I said, we're picking it up very close to the end because it's just too ridiculous for words to do the whole thing. And at this point, that is about all he can think of. God has got it in for me. Why does he always pick on me? So finally, one of the storekeepers says, look, I've got a little farm a few miles from here. Nobody's been using it for a while. If you want, you can take your family out there. I'll provide food, everything you need to run this farm for a while. And if you manage to make some money off it, I'll even give you a share of the profits, okay? But anything to shut you up. So Abraham takes him up on it. He moves out to the farm. It takes him several years, but several years later, he's getting the farm to actually be a little profitable. And he's looking forward to this year getting his first profit from the farm. And guess what? A fire ravages through his fields, and his fields only, and the crop is utterly destroyed. And since we're picking this up at the end of the story, this time he is inconsolable. No one can do anything with him. All he will do is kneel on the ground and beat his head against the bare earth and scream, "Why me? Why me? Why is it always me?" And all the neighbors by now have come to see this interesting spectacle of a grown man making an utter fool of himself. And while they're sitting there saying, what can we do? This has been going on for hours. We can't do anything with him. Suddenly, this voice booms out of the heavens and says, "Oh, I don't know, Abe. There's just something about you that ticks me off." Fortunately, he doesn't seem to feel that way about most of us, huh? We do the judging here, I do believe. He don't seem to feel that way. It's, life, everything is just interesting. It's just a part to play. Sounds like fun. And you don't seem to judge. We had a long history here of that old saying, huh? The sun shines on the saint and sinner alike. In fact, sometimes it sort of looks like that other saying, the good die young. And sometimes it almost looks like if you do his will, you get punished, doesn't it? It does not appear that he has much judgment on what we call right and wrong. In fact, I read a story one time that said he kind of warned us away from the idea of good and bad and right and wrong, and said, I wouldn't get involved in that if I were you. It's not good for you. You might be real sorry if you play that game. So we've got a neat setup here, if this interests you. That if you wanted to, what you could be doing is playing the part of a human being, and that's all it is, folks. This is not me. This is a role that I play. I'm a chip off my daddy's shoulder. Just like him. I am the biggest ham you'll ever want to meet, and I think you certainly know that about Phil, huh? It's one of the fantasies that I have, that on the day when I go back to say hi, go home again and say, "Hi, Dad, how you doing?" He's going to say, "What'd you do for," well, you know you were there, but if you really want to ask, I'll tell you what I did. Okay, I spent a number of decades being about as flamboyant as I possibly could be. It was a kick. And I think you'll understand, because I think he's a bit of a ham himself, huh? Yeah, at every opportunity, I just over-dramatized everything. It was a hoot. Least little thing happened, I turned it into a big drama. It was fun. And boy, did I disturb those folks down there. You ought to see them. I made sure that everything I did, it really upset them. I had a good time. I'd like a vacation. Please don't send me back soon. But it was fun. That's all this is. It's just a big drama. It's an interesting thing. In the midst of playing the part, you get to learn a lot of things. You get to grow and develop. I really doubt that you will leave here the way you came. Unfortunately, for most of us, we leave in slightly worse shape than when we arrived. But I doubt if you'll come through here unscathed. You decide to play the game freely, I think you might come out of this a far greater being than what you came in as. Because we've got another story that a person told in an effort to give people a little sense of what was going on here that you might want to listen to again this time. And the story goes something along the lines of the fact that once upon a time there was a great man who wanted to give a party. Actually, I think it was a feast in those days, but I don't think they had parties back then. But we'll say party, okay? So he invited all of his friends to this party, and none of them wanted to come. They sent excuses instead of RSVPs. I'm sorry, I can't come because. The original story told what some of the excuses were. But this guy got a little miffed and said, you know, I prepared for a party. We were going to have a party here. So he told his servants, I want you to go out into the streets and the alleys of the town nearby. And I want you to bring back all the bums and all the cripples and all the winos and fill this house because we are having a party. And here we are. He invited us in. He said, my house is yours. Trash it if you must. I'd appreciate it if you'd take care of it. He did give us those instructions when inviting us here. Please take care of the place. But, you know, we sort of ignored him. Clearly, it's not that big a deal. He does make it very clear, however, that it's his, doesn't he? Because people have this interesting game they like to play here of accumulating piles of crap from all over the world and labeling it and saying, this is mine. Isn't that right? This is my stuff. It belongs to me. And every time life says, okay, you know, you're kind of invited to leave the party. It was fun, but I got more guests coming. We need the space. I notice on the way out, life says, oh, and you know, all of my stuff that you gathered up and said was yours, just leave it by the door. Don't worry about it. People will redistribute it. It's okay. Don't even think any more about it. They'll take care of it, okay? But that was actually mine. You can't have it. It was a fun game. It's an interesting party. Because, oh, I don't know, we sort of seem to be the scum of the universe, as best I can tell, who were invited into a great man's house and told to treat it as though it were ours, use it as though it were ours. He seems to not even be present most of the time in the flesh, so to speak, huh? Then watch over you. But at the same time, there's a potential here. That we do not have to leave as a bum or a cripple. Huh. Unfortunately, most of us refuse. We are so happy being a bum and a cripple and a wino that when given a chance, which I perfectly understand, I've been through this in this world, we won't take it to elevate ourselves. But the opportunity is here. That if you decide maybe you kind of like the way things are, you don't have to leave in the shape you came in on. You can grow and develop and change, and I don't know what you'll be when you split. But it doesn't have to be a bum or a cripple or a wino. That story is a little real to me because at one time in my life I took bums' lies seriously. The lie they always told me, most of them anyway, was, no one will give me a break. I hate living here on the streets. It's just so horrible, but no one will give me a break. And I had just started a new business, so I said, well, come and work for me. I'll give you a job. I'll give you more than enough money to have a place to stay. And if you talk to the other employees, you'll find out that this job is available because the last person got promoted and is now making a heck of a lot more money because I trained them to do a technical skill, yada, yada, yada. Now, one of those folks lasted for more than a week and a half before I'd see them out on the street again, whining that no one would give them a break because that was just a scam. It was the way they took money from people. And it wasn't true. They were on the streets because they wanted to be on the streets. I know that from my own experience because I took them seriously and said, here's a break. I have a lot, but you're more than welcome to use this as a way off the streets if you like. Could even be more than that. Not one of them meant it. And then we wonder why we say that human beings are playing the role of victim. See? We came here apparently as victims, and we are apparently going to leave here as victims, aren't we? No matter what the actual set of circumstances, that I was given an opportunity to be God while I was here. And see how I'd leave if I did that. Really is an interesting party, don't you think? I wish I could give a party like that. Or one of the party favors was immortality and incredible attributes. If you just actually get that tail on the donkey, boy, you get a prize, huh? Because I told you probably before that, in my opinion, that is the favorite game on planet Earth, is pin the tail on the donkey. Remember that game? It seems to describe what's going on here very well to me. I played it many years ago, back before they had Velcro everywhere. So we didn't use little Velcro donkey tails. We used pins, just like it says. And they'd put a tailless donkey up on the wall, and they'd give you a little paper donkey tail with a pin through it. And then just to make the game interesting, they would blindfold you so you could no longer find a donkey, and then spin you around until you were so disoriented you had no clue where anything was anymore at all. And then everyone would laugh while you went dizzily walking around looking for a donkey's ass. And that's the way we played the game. Except I think life put a little spin on this game. He thought that was such a fun game that he said, I think I'd like to do that on planet Earth. Except what I'm going to do is I'm going to blindfold everybody. And I'm going to spin them all around before they get here, and they'll forget everything. They won't know why they're here. They won't know where they came from. They'll just suddenly, poof, appear here totally confused and dazed. And I'm going to tell them there's a donkey somewhere. And I'm going to give them a pin. And that if they can just find that donkey's ass and pin their pin on it, I will give them a great prize, and I'm going to have such a kick while they all blindfolded and dazed poke each other with pins looking for the donkey's ass. It's a kick. Look at those funny people looking for the prize, going, poke, 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 are you the prize?